What's up, Amazon sellers? Today, I'm super excited to be talking about Amazon UK versus Amazon USA for online arbitrage. And a good friend of mine, Gavin Sweeney, is going to share all about it because he is selling or has sold on both marketplaces. Stay tuned. Right, if you don't know, today I'm going to be talking with a good friend of mine, Gavin Sweeney, and I'm really interested to learn about his experience in selling on both UK and the USA in doing online arbitrage, and why he's changed marketplaces and what's going on, and what advice he can share with other people. So first things first, Gavin, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you're a busy man, and my God, you've got a lot going on. Obviously, we were talking just off camera about all the cool stuff you're doing. So before we jump into that, if anyone doesn't know who you are, could you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and your selling journey so far?
First off, thanks for having me on this call. That's really appreciated. So my name is Gavin Sweeney. As Tom said, I ran the UK to about 970k sales, and then done a U-turn straight to the USA. Now, Tom's always like, why don't you just go to 1 million? Tom's like, why don't you just run it to 1 million and then switch? I'm like, well, because then I've been losing money by not moving quick enough. So I just left that 970k. We're now selling on the USA specifically, not the UK anymore. And we have an American company, and last month we done $170k in sales. This month we're expecting to do 160k. Then next month it should be like 200k. We've actually just accepted a 164k loan from Amazon, so we're starting to ramp up things big time.
That's incredible. So if I just clarify, obviously you didn't get to the 1 million, but you pretty much were a £1 million seller in the UK. And I also love the fact that you didn't actually get to it, because there is a bit of a vanity metric around like, hey, I'm a 7-figure seller. But then you were like, no, US is where I want to go. So you shut the UK down, moved over to the US, and obviously the US now you're absolutely smashing it, 170k in sales. Is that right? Obviously you're not selling in the UK anymore. Is that right?
No, nothing in the UK. That market is dead to me for now. Maybe in the future I might restart it to get some Amex points and stuff, but yeah.
Fantastic. And if you don't know, Gavin and I are always talking about travel Amex points. I absolutely love traveling, and so does Gavin. And we regularly meet. Right now we're both, well, a lot of the time we're in Mexico together. So question for you, and if anyone is watching, just tell us a little bit about the UK. Like, what is the UK market like? You can kind of give some comparisons, but like, if anyone's thinking about getting started in the UK, and I appreciate you're a UK national, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's where you're from. So tell us a bit about what is like the marketplace for arbitrage in the UK.
Like, if you're doing RA, it's pretty good still, but it's limited in terms of how much you can scale. The reason it's good is that clearance sales, you're going to be able to pick up stuff that not many people will be able to pick up. But when it comes to OA, it's very important to super niche down. For example, if you only do the common beauty, or if you only source at the common websites like Lux Plus, Cult Beauty, the Hook Group type websites, then you're going to be in trouble, because everybody who is new is also sourcing on these websites. So the UK is good, but you have to niche down a lot into very specific categories and find something that works for you, and then don't share that with everybody. Perhaps what would be ideal is to have your own inner circle, and then you share your ideas with the inner circle and you grow together. But definitely once you got a niche in the UK, don't share it with everybody, because that niche will become dead very quick.
Cool. Interesting. I think that's an interesting one. Like, I know a lot of people, she's here in the UK and the US, who have shared a lot. Like, everyone asks me, like, Tom, what should I start selling? I'm like, that's the one question you really don't want to listen to the answer to, because if you do what everyone else says, it's just not going to work out. So I wrote down here, oversaturated on the common like categories that everyone's always doing. Like, find your niche and focus on that. So I think that's a really important point.
I will say,
so
if you are a non-VAT seller,
yep,
you can get away with doing like standard beauty items, but you want to use this as a learning path. Like, for example, you use this to learn how to source, you use it to learn how to learn keeper, and then we're in that niche. You look at what works extremely well and then niche down within that. So it's a very good entry level for people where you can still definitely make money. But once you get to VAT registered, if you don't change and if you don't adapt to what you're doing, then you're going to struggle. Unless obviously you have very high capital where you can accept very low margins, so it just doesn't matter as much. You're still making a lot of profit that is good for your life that you want.
And that's certainly the model that I do. I do a lot more volume, as we say, lower margin. So question for you, how long were you selling on the UK for?
I think like 1.5 years.
Obviously, because I remember interviewing you in person in WeWork in Birmingham, and you talked about how you were like, you started off doing RA during COVID, and you were like carrying printers around. It wasn't all OA, it was RA to start with, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. The thing is, it was RA because I only started with 1.5k. I had no money when I started, and if I was doing away, the margins were a lot smaller. Whereas me running to B&Ms and that kind of stuff, sourcing from there, I was getting way higher margins, like 70 to 100% quite often. So it allowed me to scale a lot quicker. The downside is I had no car. I had to go on the tube, carry it in big B&M bags, which is just, oh my God, it was so much hassle. But I think it was like kind of like a dopamine rush that I was going to such insane lengths. Like you're on the tube with these massive bags of Yale security alarms. Everyone's like staring at you like, what's wrong with this guy? You're like, yeah, I'm making some cash flow. So there's definitely like a sense of pride when you're doing that as well. And I think that helped me grind through it.
Definitely a hustler. I don't deny that. So, okay, so obviously you're selling on the UK, you talked about it, pretty much a year and a half, you say. You started RA, you moved over to OA. 970,000, we're not talking about a small number. This is like just shy of 1 million, 7-figure seller, absolutely massive. And then you decided to go, I'm done. That's it. I'm leaving this business so close to 7 figures. Why? Why did you go, I'm out of here? Tell me about that.
It was during the period of like March, April time, which is kind of like the most savage period for UK. Like February, March, April, it's just absolutely savage. And at that time, we was doing beauty. It was accepting lower margins, that was fine. But what I noticed was the increase in seller count was just absolutely demolishing us. Like the amount we was making was significantly less. And I had an option. I either change the niche within the UK market and we do something different, or I jump to a market which is 5 times bigger. For me, that made more sense to go to the much bigger market where there's much more opportunity. Because obviously if it's 5 times bigger, there's going to be a lot more sellers. But I think relatively to the UK, there's still less sellers in a relative sense. So the USA just made far more sense in terms of like getting more sales, more profit, more scalability. Like if you look at at that time, there wasn't many 7-figure sellers in the UK market, right? But in the USA, being a 7-figure seller is like, it's kind of common. Like there's a lot, or it's not common, but there's a lot of 7-figure sellers in the USA. So if you think about it, not many 7-figure sellers in the UK, there's so many in the USA. Well, obviously there's something about the USA that's different then.
Agreed. And it's certainly something you see. So, and I'm guessing because you'd networked, you'd met a lot of people and learned about what the marketplace was, should we say, over the pond. You could get an idea of like, was it going to be a grass is greener on the other side kind of question, shiny object, or is it reality that's going to help you out? So you decided to leave. Tell me about that transition. What did you do? Did you like use your UK company, start selling in the US? How did you do it?
Well, this transition was disgustingly horribly done. Definitely a lot of learning lessons of what not to do. Because I just went gung-ho, just moved some of my best sources straight over to the USA with an American company. So we had an American company. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to move over 2 of my best sources, get my admin VA working like half between each. And then I moved over my 3rd sourcer to the USA as well. The reason why this didn't work is because then my UK purchase manager went a bit rogue because everyone has moved over and she's left there managing this company that wasn't doing as well as it's doing in Q4. So she wasn't happy about that. Maybe I also I definitely did not give her enough support in that transition as well. And it's like, one thing we have to remember is that when we're moving people around, we're moving their lives around in a way. So I just play like action figures or whatever with people doesn't really work well. Like it needed a much more thorough planning of how I would handle that. The end result though was very good. I could also argue that if my purchase manager went rogue by explaining it, there was a red flag there anyway. Would you want that person as a long-time purchase manager? Like she just started buying the wrong items and started buying bad items. Not sure if that was on purpose or what, or if she just stopped caring.
Does she still work for you now?
No, I let her go ages ago.
Okay, fine. So if I just kind of clarify, because I'm reading between the lines, hearing a lot. So you didn't use your UK company to just go start selling on Amazon USA. You said you created a whole new company, I'm guessing like an American LLC, is that right?
Yes, we made an American LLC because a lot of the American websites require a American billing address. So in order to do that and have an American billing address, shipping address, we just went straight down the LLC route. We purchased your guide, which is very helpful in terms of like how we get across order cancellations, because that was one of the biggest challenges on USA is the bloody order cancellations. Oh my god, when we first started, it was like 2 or 3 months of just non-stop order cancellations. It was so annoying.
I think that's a really common one, and it's a lot higher in the US versus the UK. They're a lot more like strict on like credit card details being perfect or like reasons to reject. Is that something that you saw as well? That's what we saw.
Yeah, absolutely. Even to the point that if your screen resolution is different, they'll pick up on that. For example, if you have a VA that has a specific screen resolution, another VA has a different one, they're both purchasing, some of the big websites will pick up on that. Because in the browser on Chrome, it has the user agent, which has like device used, the resolution of your monitor, and a few other bits and pieces. They actually check that with your previous purchases and make sure that's still correct now. If you have that which is incorrect in like a different location, then they're like, no, can't accept this. They would even decline you just for like using a different card sometimes. They're like, this isn't the card you normally purchase on, or this is a different billing address. So yeah, we declined it until you call them and explain. So they're super strict, man, isn't it?
And then also you have to get on the phone and give them a call, which is like another logistical nightmare. Like, oh my God, it's just like, all I want to do is buy stock. So and if I just come back, so you made the transition, you had an American company set up. I appreciate you probably set that up prior. And then you should say, you did what you said no one should do. You moved kind of half the team over, but you didn't. And then it caused a mess. And like, just a quick question. Obviously, we know because you talked about it, you shut down the UK and you moved to the US. How long was that transition period? Like from starting to, okay, now there's no more people in the UK. So how long was that?
I would say 1 or 2 months. Because I moved 2 people over slowly. We slowly started getting used to it. Then once we did see like much better margins in the UK quite quickly. And then it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to move over some more. Then at that point, my purchase manager started going rogue. So then I had to fire her. I had to fire a senior sourcer as well. And then I was like, okay, we're just going to shut down the UK. There's just no point. Just everyone moved to the USA. Because as well, because I was having issues with the UK, that means the UK wasn't fully outsourced. And because I'm moving to the USA, my attention split too much, which also negatively impacts the American one. It's not going to move as quick because my UK purchase manager is playing up. So I was like, you know what? I'll just stop UK and just focus entirely on the USA. Just
a quick question. I don't think I would ask you, but what was the structure of the UK team prior to the move? Like, tell me, like, how many people did you have? What were their roles?
Oh, I had a lot of people. I had 4 sourcers, 1 admin VA, 1 full-time purchaser, and the purchase manager.
So you really had 2 people purchasing, 1 admin and 2 sources. Is that right?
The manager didn't purchase. He was more.
Just a manager.
Managing the teams, yeah, more of a manager.
1 manager / reviewer.
And I will say, like, because a team gets good at one niche, they get comfortable within that niche. And what I realized that moving them to the American market, their skills were just not the same. They couldn't handle it, and I realized the analysis was definitely not where I wanted it to be. There was actually a lot of gaps in the analysis, which is quite interesting. It goes to show that we really do learn the markets, and then the issue you may have or may not have is that your skills can become soft. You just know the products that well, so you start looking at keeping the same way because you know what you're selling. Then when you move to a new market, it's like you have to refresh yourself. But if you've been doing this for like 2 years or 1 year, right, then you got to refresh all your skills in this new market. People don't want to do that. People don't want to go through that much extra effort.
Agreed. I just kind of tangent. You know, we've had that whereby, you know, recently in our team we went from kind of like source whatever you like to now source category, and people have had to reanalyze stuff, and we're like, you know, some people have really struggled, and we've had to been forced to let some staff go, you know, who were previously good sourcers because they were like, this isn't what I know, and we're like, we've had to move them into a certain area, and they're like, they don't want to learn it, they don't want to adapt. And I think it's really interesting because the one thing I always say in my company is like, the only certainty in life is change. Like, we've always got to be keep learning. So definitely, you know, I think that's really interesting to share. So coming back,
hold on.
Go on.
So to add to that, one of the senior sources that I didn't let go because she couldn't adapt to the shoe market, I put her back to the UK market like 4 or 5 months after because she was so good, she was crazy good. I let a mentee hire her, but then actually what happened was she was unable to source back on the UK because the market had changed too much. So she wasn't able to adapt to the UK market, and what she was so good at no longer worked. So she got let go.
Yeah, it does happen.
Yeah.
You know, like we've got to adapt. You know, as business owners, if we take a break and then come back and we can't, you know, make our business work, then, you know, we'll die. That's the nature of business. Unfortunately, it does happen. So let's come back. Your UK market, you're making a transition over to the US. You got your American LLC. You got your team. You kind of transferred some over, and after about 2 months, you kind of went, no, like I'm done. Like in the UK, I'm now going to the USA. Everything's all USA. You know, let me ask you a question. It kind of looked like you were doing a bit 50-50. So you half UK, half USA. But obviously, you had a realization at some point. I'm all in. I'm shutting down. I'm going to hit 970. I'm not doing a million. I'm out of here. I'm going over to USA. Why? What did you see in the USA marketplace that made you decide to, you know, not get to 7 figures? What did you see in that marketplace?
We were just spending so much more money easier. it was way easier to spend a lot more money. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was still making a lot of mistakes because I'm completely new to the market, but it was way easier to spend money. Our margins were just way higher. Let's say in the UK was operating somewhere between 5% and 7% net margins.
Okay.
I think February though and March was more like 5%. It got pretty tight. But then moving to the USA, we had like an instant 10% net margin. So it was like, it just made so much sense. It's like, oh, we're just making double the money. Okay, let's just move.
And it's kind of, and I'm guessing in that respect, it's kind of like I could do half the work and get the same result. Why would I keep staying here? Like there's that realization. You're like, wow, if I do the same amount of work, I get double the result. Like when you're looking at that increase in margin from 5 to 10%, you're like, okay, wow, like I can really do this.
To add on to that, it's not just that; it's how much money you can spend, which is important too. Like if I'm finding it that hard to spend that much money on the UK market, if I can spend it easier, the net margin might be higher. But actually, the profit's going to be much higher, even if it was the same net margin, because I'm spending so much more money.
Question for you, like when you're in the UK, obviously you've been spending, like you said, you started off with like 1,500, which is very little, and obviously you've got to 970. I'm guessing you had access to like capital, credit cards, Amazon loans. Would that be right?
Amazon loans, no. Credit cards, yes. So the way I scaled was I refused. So when I first started, I absolutely refused to buy items like £10 sell for 20. I felt like that would just take too long to like spend money and grow if it's just me. So I was looking for more expensive items, and because it was during COVID, I was thinking about what people needed. So my focus was on like electronics, more expensive items, technology, that kind of stuff. I can just spend more money. And then I came across printers for like 4 or 5 months. I was buying printers for like £50, selling them for 100 to 150. So I was making tons of money. And at that point, once I realized it was working, I then got a 6.4k 0% purchase credit card from Halifax.
Cool.
And that all got spent in like 2 days. Then we got a 3.3k Sainsbury's one, like a couple of months after. We also got a 2k PayPal credit card as well. So yeah, I just went completely gung-ho on all credit cards, all personal money, all subscriptions and that kind of stuff was covered from my personal money.
Yep. And then you said you talked about like you couldn't spend. So if I kind of ask you the question, when you talked about finishing the end of the UK, give us an idea like how much were you spending per week and like how much money did you have excess after the end of the week? You're like, my God, I wish I could spend this. Give us an idea. What does that mean?
Yeah, okay. So we were spending, November, Q4 was different, right? Q4 we spent like 20k in 1 week. Okay. But then in February, March, was only spending like 7-8k per week. And it was getting slightly worse. The best source was doing like 2.5 to 3k. But that was comparison of it to her November, her 1 week of her November was like 15k. Like there was a website.
It's big difference.
Yeah. So we probably had like £50,000 in the bank not being spent, including credit cards. So if you include the credit cards, like 30k credit card usage, maybe there's like £80,000 not being spent.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so for you, that's like, and I understand it from a seller's perspective. We look at money in the bank is doing nothing. It's earning like 0% interest. You're like, even if I'm getting a rubbish margin, I'm still making money on it, and you really want to get that money into stock as quickly as possible. So for you, looking at the UK, it's like I'm just struggling. Like I'm really struggling. And can I ask a question? When you talked about spending in the UK, you said margins were dropping. What kind of ROIs were you looking at? When you're sourcing in, should we say maybe like the November, and then also what were you seeing in like March, April time? When you said times were getting tougher.
So we lowered the ROI requirements to 15% ROI if it's below, I think about 18,000 BSR. So we can buy it in volume, we accept lower. Apart from that, it's got a minimum 20% ROI. What was interesting though as well, we went through a period where I was trying to move the team away from Vue to get them to do other niches. Basically the entire team struggled to like do that, apart from one person. And the one person who had no problems like just switching completely is now the purchase manager for America. And what's particularly interesting is his personality. I just think he has a very adaptable personality as a person and very positive, whereas I guess some of these other people in the team may not have had the same mentality, so may have like had a lot more resistance. And if you have resistance to big changes, then you're just not going to perform at the same person who's someone who is adaptable.
And I think that's even like I said, that's relevant to us as business owners. We need to adapt or die. That's the important point. Yeah. Let me ask you a question now. Obviously you did move over to USA. UK 20 down to 15% ROI. Talk about USA. What kind of ROIs are you seeing there? the grass is greener, the shiny object. Yeah. What does it look like? Let us know.
There's two ways of looking at this. There's the SDK ROI, which is usually like between 40 and 50%. But then there's the Inventory Labs ROI, which is different because it calculates returns, which is more like 30 to 35%.
And by the way, when we're talking about the ROI in the UK, 20-25%, is that Inventory Labs or SDK or something else?
Well, UK is just SDK.
Okay, so if we were to do a comparison, you're saying it was between 20 and 15 to 20% in the UK. When you came into USA, you saw it kind of go to 40 to 50%. Would that be correct?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a big difference. Okay. And I can certainly see why you're like, wow. And I'm guessing you can spend the money as well. Is that right?
Exactly. Spend more money. Because we're doing shoes, the thing is our return rate is a lot higher. So maybe our net ROI for product sold is like between 30 and 33%, which is still a massive difference on top of the beauty compared to the beauty items in the UK. Yeah. But that's not the only thing.
It'll be like another.
USA so good. We have all the rewards in the UK, which is twice as good as the UK, like 5 times better than the UK. Oh my god! It was like,
go on, tell me about the rewards.
I was getting Rakuten points, right? 15% cashback on so many websites. I got 150,000 Rakuten points in 1 week of spending. It was so insane. Yeah, that Black Friday week. It's like everyone just like ups it. It's crazy. It's gone mental.
I remember you posting about that. I was like, I'm really jealous. You're getting way more points than me. But like, it's fantastic. Like, I think it's so good. And obviously, you know how to maximize, and your team do a really good job of that as well. And can I ask a question? Obviously, you're spending more money now in the US. Is that right?
Yeah, we spend about 70 to 80k per month now.
Cool.
And I think that's going up quite quick now as well. What it has to do, which is a massive loan. That's
so, what, 160k?
Yeah.
That's a lot of cash.
We're also moving into USA to USA wholesale, and that's part of the reason why we took the loan, right? So we can spend that money on wholesale.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really exciting time in terms of like what's happening. 2
final questions I want to ask you. Number one, if anyone's watching right now, what are the differences between the UK and the USA? You know, maybe they're looking at both marketplaces. So tell me about the differences. Pros and cons UK, pros and cons USA.
Okay, pros and cons of the UK. It's at home, it's comfortable. If stuff goes wrong, there's more people to rely on. You can send products to friends or family. You already understand the website, you have an idea of how it works. Cons, pretty saturated. You have to niche down quite a lot. Margins are typically lower. Sales velocity per sales rank is way smaller, like just exponentially smaller. There's way less niches, there's less opportunity, relatively speaking. Then cons of the USA, your cash cycle time is a lot longer. And if you do very common niches in the USA, then you are also prone to tanking, the same as the UK, so that's kind of the same. Cool. Pros, way bigger, way bigger, way more sales velocity. Cashback rewards is just like 3x the UK. You got Rakuten, top cashback. It's just wild. And then even Amex points give you like conversion bonuses as well, which is a massive plus. ROI is higher, margin is higher, more niches. There's like an infinite amount of niches you can do, an infinite amount of sourcing techniques. I guess wholesale is massive. There's like 5 times more people though in America than there is in the UK. And the USA has a big spending culture. So here's another thing that was going through my head. If we're going into a recession, do you want to be signed on the UK or do you want to be signed in America? Like, which one is more recession proof? To me, that's definitely America by quite a large margin. And the UK is a much smaller country. The USA is far more self-sufficient as a country, right? Then we can also go on. Who's affected more by the war in Ukraine? Europe or USA? Europe is. That then impacts margins as well. And maybe back in 2022 when the war started happening, maybe that did impact our margins. I don't know. But things went pretty south. Whereas the USA, as I said, it's just more self-sufficient. It's less prone to outside influence.
Yeah, I think there's some really interesting points there. Yeah, I think I was reading about it one day. It was like Pearl Harbor was the last time America was attacked on its home soil, or maybe 9/11, should we say? But yeah, it's interesting. Whereas obviously, like England and Europe obviously have a bigger effect. And obviously like it's a lot closer. And obviously that has an impact on like culture, spending, and even different times. So question for you, and I like that. I like that pros and cons. I thought that was really good. So I'll certainly do something with that. A question for you, if anyone right now is thinking about UK, USA, not sure, watching this, what obviously you're not a technical advisor or a qualified advisor, but what would be your thoughts? What would you say to them if you were in their shoes?
If you live in USA, then obviously to go to the USA. But let's say you're in the UK and you got like 15 15, 20k to spend. The question is, how much time are you genuinely willing to put into this? Is this going to be like, oh, you're going to give it a go, dip your feet where it's slow? Then if you're just going to dip your feet, maybe the UK. But if you're going to go gung-ho all in straight away, straight to the USA. But you have to be, I think you have to be mentally committed, because a con of the USA actually is that services are more expensive. Your CPA/accountant is more expensive, and there's startup costs to get started in the USA. And because of this, you have to be fully committed about going into the USA. Technically, you could just go to the UK, realize, okay, you like this, and then go straight to the USA. But if you're 100% committed, you're new to the Amazon scene overall, and you're going to start putting in like 4 or 5 plus hours per day, then definitely the USA. But the kind of like the issue I have saying this is that a lot of people go, yeah, I'm going to do like 5 hours a day, I'll go to the USA then. Then they do it, and they do 1 hour a day. It just doesn't work.
Would you say, as you were talking, I had the idea that if you're thinking about it, and I think one of the things that I always see is people think they're going to do a lot, and then the reality is, that life is very different to what we expect. Yeah. Is to say that perhaps maybe if you're in the UK, it might be the idea that you do trade first, stay under the VAT threshold. That's a great opportunity to see if this is going to be the business model for you. And then before you make that kind of transition through the VAT threshold, you say, look, if I'm really taking this business seriously, I can either grow my UK, build that up, and then move to USA, or perhaps maybe I've learned so much in the UK, that's like the training ground under that threshold, close it down because I'm a sole trader, now move to the USA because I know what I'm doing, and also so I know that this is the business for me, not like, and I can do 5 hours a day, not 1 hour that makes you say a lot moving forward.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you think to that?
We should also say though that if you do find a really good niche in the UK where your margins is really good, your sales velocity is really good, don't just end that, keep that going. Maybe even not even bother move to USA, focus on growing that. But if your margins are not that great in the UK, you feel like you got a good hang of it, or maybe your niche got destroyed, because that's definitely going to happen. No niche is sustainable forever. Maybe then, you can consider moving to the USA. Or perhaps you build a small team for your UK and just keep it outsourced, keep some money coming in, and then expand to the USA. But I would say, like, when you want to move to the USA, you need to have a good amount of capital to actually invest. Like, I would say 15k plus at least to invest into USA. I know some people say 10k. If 20% of your money is instantly gone on services, I think just have a little bit more.
Agreed. If people just want to know from perspective, generally a CPA, your accountants are going to cost you about $1,000 a month. For an Amazon Pacific accountant, that's like over 3 months turnover, that's 3,000 gone. Like, wow, that starts adding up. And obviously you don't need it from day one, but what we are trying to demonstrate is the fact that in the UK it's probably like £200-300, whereas it's $1,000 in the USA. So everything's just a lot more expensive. So the more capital you have in any business to start with, generally the more successful you're going to be, so long as everything else stays the same, like you work hard. So I really like that. Thank you so much, Gavin. Question for you: if anyone wants to get in contact, what's the best way they can do it?
So you can drop me a message on Facebook. You can just search for my name, Gavin Sweeney, on Facebook, or you can find me on Twitter, which is @Gavin Sweeney.
And what I'll do is, if anyone wants to know, I'll put a link. I'll put it all down below. So if anyone wants to get in contact, they can actually see those links. Obviously, you don't need to type it in right. You can actually just click on the link and be like, fine. Fantastic. So, Gavin, what I want to say is thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything you shared. And obviously, I love the journey. Obviously, it's been really nice to meet up with you again. And obviously, I saw you in Birmingham. And obviously, I catch up with you for like sushi in Mexico City. Obviously, I'll be back there in a couple of weeks. And obviously, I'll say hi again. But, thank you so much for like sharing all what you've learned in that journey. And I think it's a really great question that a lot of people are asking around UK, USA. So I just want to say for myself to everyone watching, thank you so much.
Anytime, Tom. It's been a pleasure to be on this, as always. Any more, always happy to do it.